What is going on, everybody? In today's video we are going to use the first part I ever made out of composites, which is this fiberglass headlight blank for my car, to scan our headlights. Use that scan to model and 3D print these little NACA ducts and run some ducts back towards our turbos. And the reason we're doing this is I'm having an issue blowing out the turbo gasket to the downpipe. So hopefully this kind of alleviates that. Alright, so new scan. High accuracy. We're going to do body because if you look in the top right preview screen, you can see the headlight has very little detail, I guess. Okay. I think it's a little bit washed out. Okay. I think that looks alright. Whoops. Lost track at the end there. There's no way it's that long. Let's see. I might be able to pick up like right around the middle. See if it knows where we're at. Alright, so we're able to re-pick up around about this corner. I think that's good enough because our duct is going to be in this area here. Alright. So if we stop that, complete the scan. There's our point cloud. We'll denoise it a little bit because there's a little bit of random ones up here. A little hard to see. So, denoise, keep denoise kind of high. Alright, so now we're going to turn it into a mesh. Alright, there we go. Plenty good enough curve to design our duct somewhere in this vicinity. Cool. So now we are going to import our headlight mesh. What we're going to do is a little clip tool with a little lasso just to get rid of a lot of data points we don't need, just to make the file a little smaller, a little easier to work with. Let's do this. Alright, good enough, because the plane of the table will be the plane I will send the duct rearward into the engine bay. And a 25-degree angle, if I were to draw a line straight here, is the angle the duct needs to go backwards. So I got plenty of room, don't need to be super accurate, and don't need to scan the inside of the car because there's so much room behind the headlight. It should be easy enough. Alright, so last thing I'm going to do is put it in Mesh Mixer. I'm going to select all, smooth it. There we go. So just dragging it up a little bit, you can see how it just smoothed the surface out. Accept that. And then again, We're going to reduce it by about 50%. Again, this just makes the file a little bit smaller and easier to work with. So that looks good. Well, you know what we can do? Let's bring it up to the origin. So this isn't necessary, just so when we import it into our CAD software, we're at least a little bit closer to where we need to be. We're going to build our own planes to build off of, but just importing it closer to the origin, it just makes it a little bit nicer to work on. Alright, re-export it. Alright, so here we are in our CAD program, and you can see our scan, and if you zoom in you can see all the faces of the scan. And I started with making a plane, a 3-point plane. If we click on it, you can see I just kind of picked 3 points around about where I knew I was going to make my duct. Plane 2, Plane 2 is just offset from that original plane, and that's the one we're going to make our main drawing on. So if we scroll down and show the sketch, you can see, a little hard to see, if I roll on it we can, there you go. If I click on it you can see all the measurements. Pretty basic shape, nothing too special. From that point we extruded. Oh, that's a surface, so hold on. There, is that it? Yeah, there we go. So you can see we extruded a surface into the headlight. At that point we did a split where we split the surface with the headlight, which gives us this line right here. Redid it again with the back part of the flange, split it, and again we were interested in this line right here. So with those lines of the split, we can then do a lofted surface, and that lofted surface is pretty much finally the foundation of building our NACA duct. The next thing, I did a level plane, which I actually named the plane, it would be plane 3 technically. But earlier in the video, when I was scanning it, I mentioned that the table is basically the angle that I want to send the duct, if we kind of line it up like backwards from this angle. I hope that kind of makes sense. So off of that sketch 2, from the level plane, just made a quick sketch, which allowed me to do plane 3, which is a vertical sketch at the angle. I hope I'm kind of explaining this right. Let's get rid of... So this plane 3 is level with the table going rearward, effectively like into the engine bay of the car. On that plane, I made the circle sketch, which I ended up using the point on the circle here from the original sketch, but you can see how it's now angled at the direction I want it to go into the headlight. So if we look at it from above, that's a good angle right there. So you can kind of see that circle right there heading straight back. So that gives us this circle right here, which we need to now blend in with the headlight. That's where these lofts come in. So this loft and this loft. Alright, so there we go. We're getting there. There we go. So now you can see our duct is pretty much taking shape, and it's mounting up perfectly with the headlight scan. So then at this point I just kind of thickened a few surfaces. I ended up using an enclose. So the enclose was you pick all of these surfaces from the lofts and enclose them, and then it effectively gives you a solid. Now that solid you can then shell out, and when you shell it, let's get rid of the headlight. There you go. So now you can see we have like a hollow shell of what we wanted. So now we need to work on the flange to the headlight. Now if we bring the headlight back in, I'm going to jump ahead several steps. So sketch 6, I'll bring that up. A little hard to see if I leave it hovered over it. So I ended up sketching out the flange, did more surface extrudes with some splits to get my lines like I did earlier on, which would give us this line here. And then once we got all of our splits, we could do all of these fills. So all of these fills give us, let's see if we can get rid of just the headlight. It's probably, there we go. Getting crowded again. Let's see, let's hide all of our sketches. You can see how we're getting just kind of a lot of just bits and pieces to make all this happen. So all of our fills, if I hover over each one, you can kind of see we're filling in a surface fill. You could probably do a lofted surface as well, like we did way back up in step, way back up here. But a lofted surface and a fill behave very, very similarly. But once we get all of the fills, which are the pieces that make up our flange, we can thicken them. There you go. And since we're modeling like right on the headlight, sometimes it's a little bit hard to see. And then a boolean is pretty much just joining this surface and this surface and this surface, so that way it knows that it's effectively one piece. So some more thickens, some more booleans. And let me hide all these surfaces real quick. Okay, so just got done hiding all of the surfaces. So now you can see we have our flange, which is perfectly the shape of the headlight. So all of those, you know, splits and surfaces and intersects and everything finally got to this point where we have our duct. Whoops, I didn't hide everything on the back, but anyways, you're getting the idea. Ended up doing a couple move faces. Don't really worry about that. That was just to move a surface somewhere where I needed it. At that point, I did a couple fillets right around the corners of everything. A couple more move faces, another boolean, some fillets, and then a bunch of booleans at the end to try and get all these surfaces as one. Now if you go up here, you can see how we still have two parts, and I'm not 100% sure why I couldn't boolean part 3 and 4 to make it just one part, even though they touch. So again, a little bit of my inexperience with CAD modeling. I have something slightly off, but if we get rid of the headlight, and let's get rid of a couple more surfaces. Those would be early ones. So there you go. So you can see how after all that, we have our duct ready to go. Now what we're going to do is, if we export part 3, hit shift and hit part 4 at the same time, these can be exported together as one piece, and we're going to send that to our slicer software. And one last thing we're going to do is, you can see this is actually just a copy paste of sketch 6, which was our flange, and just a very quick extrude. I think I did like 30 thousandths thick or something, 0.035. And we're going to print out this flange as well, and you'll see how we utilize that in a bit. Alright, so we are ready to import it into our slicer software. And this actually fits on my little Ender 3. There you go, this orientation here. After tinkering with it a little bit, you know, I was thinking of almost doing it the other way around, but the amount of support material made it like a 24-hour print versus, here, we'll just slice this. Alright, so it's about 7 hours and 1 minute. If we preview it, there you go, all that light blue is just support material. And if we scroll down, you can see all the light blue in the middle here that will support the beginning of the duct. Now that's probably going to leave a very rough surface around this area, but it shouldn't be too bad. So at this point, we're going to send it off to the printer and print it out. Alright, so with the orientation, I decided to print this. I knew the face would be kind of rough. This is a little bit rougher than I was expecting, but not terrible. So, good enough. Alright, so here's where they're going to go. And if you remember from the CAD model, it's kind of like offset a little bit from this body line corner, tilted a little bit. So, should sit in there almost just a little bit hard to see on camera, but that looks pretty good. Plenty of room to run a duct from there to blow air onto the turbo. There is no gap around that, as perfectly shaped as it is to the headlight, so that's cool. Man, this 3D scanner, 3D modeling, I just did a video not too long ago doing these and commented like to do the scan to get this curve and everything. It's like, it's cool how accurate the scan and the curve and everything just mates right up when you model it that way. So yeah, super excited with that. I'm gonna go ahead and let's start drilling the holes to get them mounted. All right, so here is the template that we printed out, and what I'm gonna do is just clamp it to the duct. Alright, so now that I'm clamped on, there's no real science to this. I'm just going to put some holes where I think they will be okay. There you go, so about evenly spaced. Alright, so now we're going to take all this to the bumper and the headlights. Alright, so if you remember a couple scenes ago, when the bumper and headlight and everything were on the car, I know I have like plenty of room, wiggle room. What's going to dictate exactly where this goes is where do the gaps and the lines look good. So if I were to like tilt it too much this way, you can see that there's a big gap right there. But if I get it right about where I modeled it, probably right about there, see really good gaps around the whole thing. It just fits in there real nicely. And what I'm going to do now, oops, moved on me a little bit, where it looks good, I'm going to drill whatever holes I can easy enough. I'm just putting a rivet in it, not squeezing it, as just a placeholder. One more placeholder. So we now have exactly where this is going to go. Alright, so now that we drilled the holes from the ducts where they're exactly going to land on the headlight, that's where this template comes back into play. Now the template, since the holes in the template were drilled on the duct, we're just going to put a couple rivets in, Again, just as little placeholders, if you will. There you go. So we got enough in there. And with a silver Sharpie, we now have exactly where we need to cut. Cool. So now we're ready to install the duct. The hardware we're going to use is just a little 1/8" aluminum rivet. I am going to put rivet washers on the back side because I don't want the rivet squeezing and breaking the plastic flange of the duct. Alright, just so you can see the back side real quick with the rivet washers. Alright, so now that the bumper is just loosely put on, you can see how everything looks pretty good. Got plenty of room to run our duct, and the turbo is somewhere back in there. Kind of really hard to see. Let's see, driver's side might be a little easier. Kind of the same deal. It's going to run right through here, and the turbo, if you see that piece of metal with all the holes, I had to put that there to protect the steering column. But there's the turbo. So you can see how the turbos just kind of live right against the firewall with like a bunch of stuff around it. And again, when this engine came out of an F-150, a truck just has a lot more space, a lot more room. They aren't racing wide open throttle for, you know, however long. So hence the need to, I think, try and shoot just a little bit of air across the turbos. Should just kind of help everything out. So let's run our duct. We're going to take the end, kind of get it to where we need it, and then work our way back to our 3D printed duct, cut it. Same thing on the other side. All right, guys, so here we go. Air goes in, follows the tube, and dumps out right there under that bundle of wires. Because the turbo, let's see, is right there. So you can kind of see how hopefully it just gets a little, you know, ambient air across the turbo. Not a ton. I'm a tiny bit nervous about this side because the exhaust manifold, it's down there quite a ways, but this tubing is rated to 275 or 300 degrees, something like that. So it's not like some kind of cheap stuff, but, you know, you get too close to your exhaust manifold, you know, nothing will really hang in there. And then driver's side, I took the duct out just to make it much easier to see. Going back, and the turbo is right under that thing with all the holes in it. Right down in there. So hopefully, again, just a little bit of air across it. This is the turbo that I've had the most issues with blowing out the gasket. So hopefully this helps. All right, guys, so there you go. Quick little simple 3D scan, 3D model, 3D print to hopefully kind of help out a little situation I'm having with this thing. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.